Hello, I'm back. Nice to see you. Quick little thing before I get started. You know how I am. I love to say things that are a bit out there and a bit, not what we usually talk about to warm me up. It's interesting that the greatest love story in the world, Romeo and Juliet, is considered the greatest love story of all time. Yet when you think about it, it's really a good young love story, not a great love story. And one of the things that interests me about it is people talk about how great it was and how happy they were and blah blah blah. But you think about it like this. Number one, she was 13 or 14, he was 17. They barely knew each other. They barely had any other connection other than the fact that they talked about how much they loved each other. They didn't know their likes or dislikes or knew if they had anything in common or any correlations. They just saw each other, did the nasty a couple of times, well, in the span of like a week or whatever, however long it's supposed to be, and then they are so clingy and so desperate for each other that when one thinks the other one's dead, then the other one kills kills themselves, and then when the other one comes back, the other one kills themselves. And this now influences people in life, because I've seen people in person when they split up with their other half. Oh, I can't live without you. I need to jump out the window. Or in my case, where's my Mariah Carey CDs? But you forget I said that. So, what I really want to talk about was The Ultimate Fighter and how interesting a season it's been. Because I will say this, The Ultimate Fighter kind of is a bit overdone, and I find that it's lost its luster that it had in its early seasons, because it was a introduction to this sport, and it did, seasons 1, 2 and 3 really did a lot for the UFC, in my opinion. And then you had other seasons like Mir and Nogueira, which was a great season. I loved that season. You had the Bisping season with Mayhem Miller later on. Going back, you had Rampage Jackson and Rashad Evans, which was a great season because of the coaches' interactions more than anything else, and also the addition of Kimbo Slice. And it was also said that Kurt Angle, Bobby Lashley and Daniel Puter were all guys considered to be fighters in that, so that would have been even more interesting. But I found that with the Ultimate Fighter formula, it's needed reworking, and at times there was just this interesting thing that was said, that they're not actually getting the best fighters out there. And I know there have been many seasons where a guy's won, like a James Wilkes, and hasn't gone to where he's needed to. Ryan Bader won, and he's a good fighter, but he's not blown up to where like guys like Rashad Evans were able to get to, and Forrest Griffin were able to get to. You had a lot of guys who've won seasons and then they're instantly forgettable. Jonathan Brookins, who apparently is taking a year out from fighting, who won when St. Pierre was a coach. But that was one of the things, and the other thing is the formula only seems to work when you have two coaches that are believed to not like each other, or two coaches that are just both very intriguing or polarizing personalities where you want to watch because you want to see what's going to happen. And I remember watching the Lesnar and Junior Dos Santos season, and I just gave up after like 3 episodes because fighters didn't interest me, fights didn't interest me, and while I liked Brock Lesnar and Junior Dos Santos, it just wasn't there. Whereas with Mir and Bisping, they would willingly argue back and forth. So now we fast forward to when it got moved to Fox, and a lot of people felt this was going to change it around, and this is going to be the turnaround, the revitalization of the show. And then they had, Uriah Faber and Dominic Cruz as coaches, which could have worked, but I felt like the heat between the two had simmered down. There was a rivalry, but it was not where it was maybe a few years before, when they were really like slamming each other to the press. And again, I felt like the format, this live format, it didn't do anything for me, to be honest. Too much John Anik, and I like John Anik, but I just couldn't get used to him on that. Welcome everyone to the... It needed a change. And then they had, obviously, Carwin and Roy Nelson, which I think could have been promising. Roy Nelson and Dana White's interactions could have been like the thing for people to have tuned in to see. Unfortunately, Carwin didn't really bring it in terms of a personality or anything. It was just, Shane Carwin. And then the fights themselves were very, very boring, I felt. You just had these guys just not doing anything. As Dana said, it's not summer camp. You are supposed to fight. And he even told them, look, if you don't start fighting, a lot of you guys are not getting callbacks. So that was an interesting season because... No, it wasn't an interesting season. That's why it was not an interesting season. And then you had... I'm trying to remember what happened. Yeah, the season just kind of fell flat. So now they've said new format, new changes. And speaking of the things, the topics of this really are what I thought of the season and one thing in particular that I picked up on this season so far. So with this season, I've actually been more into the fights. I felt like the format has more of a HBO boxing 24/7 feel to it, or a UFC primetime feel to it, which is a different presentation, but I do like it. I like the fact that we were kind of getting to know more about the people, and there's some interesting angles, if you will, in the show. You've got Uriah Hall, who seems to be everyone's favourite right now from the fans, in his spinning kick and his personality, and you've got some other guys in there. You've got this English fighter that's in there. A lot of interesting things are starting to kind of develop there, and there seems to be some talent and some great fights. I've watched quite a few of the fights of the season, and I've actually enjoyed most of them and got into most of them. And yeah, it looks like the talent has been, they've been a little bit more meticulous as to who's going in the house in terms of what kind of fights they're going to get. And this time we're getting 3 fights that are actually exciting to watch, unlike last season. And in addition to that, and the other thing I want to talk about is the 2 coaches. Now, give me 2 seconds, because here's a statement I want to make as I've watched these 6 episodes. Is it just me? Other people have somewhat touched on this. Think about it for a while. Chael Sonnen and Jon Jones are going to be fighting. Obviously, there was that controversy a few months ago when Jon turned down the fight the first time. Chael went crazy to the press, as he always does, said some hilarious stuff about him. They end up capitalising on this and making the 2 coaches. And as this season has gone by, and I can believe I'm saying this, is it just me, or has Chael Sonnen come across as far more likeable as a person and a personality than Jon Jones has? Now think about that for a few seconds. I'm just going to get my tea. You know how I am. But just think about that. Has Chael Sonnen come off as more likeable? It's bloody cold. Anyways, so a lot of people... You've got 2 coaches that are very, controversial. A lot of guys love or hate Jon Jones, but it seems lately a lot more people hate Jon Jones. They think he's insincere, they think he's too cocky, they think he's too arrogant. A lot of people didn't like him after that Rashad Evans debacle and all of that went down. A lot of people hated him even more after the Dan Henderson UFC 151 stuff. A lot of people don't like him, but you can't deny the guy's very, very talented and very skilled. But, he's very talented and very skilled, and he just has this thing to him. And I know that the UFC, and it seems like to me, they want Jon Jones to be loved by everyone. They want him to be the American George St. Pierre in their minds. And he could get there eventually, but still, fans haven't completely warmed to him. And I believe that they felt that in this season, one of the goals or one of the aims was to make Jon Jones a far more likeable and far more popular personality as the season comes to a wrap up, and as they go on to do the Sonnen and Jones fight. And while Jon hasn't come off as, I'll call it like this. Jon has not come across as an unlikable person in this season. He's just come across as a young man with great skills that, is inexperienced in the coaching role. Now, you compare him to a Chael Sonnen in this, his rival coach. And I think that Chael Sonnen has probably won a lot of people over and is going to continue to win more people over based on how he has come off during this season. Now, give me 2 more seconds. So what I'm getting at is this. Chael seems to be taking this very, very seriously. And I know a lot of people, when they heard Chael's going to be on The Ultimate Fighter, I'm sure a lot of people expected the usual Chael Sonnen craziness, him just calling Jon Jones out, dissing him, and being the Chael that we usually know. And I think, yeah, that does make for an interesting season, and that's probably what got everyone interested in the first place. But what we've seen this season is a different side to Chael Sonnen that I think fans were not prepared to see just yet. But it's been a good side because it's warmed him over. Chael has come off as a very respectful and very likeable and very charismatic coach, which I think is what they wanted Jon Jones to come off as. A lot of people talk about, oh, Chael has no respect, Chael has no respect. There was a moment when one of his fighters, Uriah Hall, won. You know, when he did that famous spinning back kick? And the guy was out completely. And Chael handled that very, very well because it was his guy who won. But he was very respectful and was like, you know, and helped him. You know, just watch how he carries himself. It was a very, very warming, you know, thing to do. I thought it was quite. It showed a nice side to Chael Sonnen, basically, is what I'm getting at. Unlike Rampage Jackson, who was disastrous as a coach, but that's another story altogether. Chael came off very, very well in that. And now what I want to talk about is the interactions he has had with the people in his team. Now, there was an interesting point in the there was an interesting point where Uriah Hall was talking about emotions and where he is and how it's going to get to him and blah, blah, blah. And he came to Chael for some advice. And again, in a lot of the interactions he's given these guys, he's almost come off like a guru. Very, very sound and very, very intelligent, well thought and well spoken advice that he's giving his fighters, and really, you know, giving them the confidence to go out there and do what they need to do when they're in the octagon. I think that Chael has done a tremendous job on that, and a lot of people did say this leading into it. This is apparently going to be a season where you're going to struggle to not like Chael Sonnen. You're going to find yourself warming to him, and I think that people really prepared. Well, I think that we were expected to warm to Jon. Chael would be the trash talker. Jon would be the hero at the end of it. But thus far, as the season's gone on and on and on and on, we've seen that Chael is not all what you think he is. Great talker, of course. Intelligent man, of course, but a very likable and very respectful person. And I'm not surprised that he's good as a coach because he has coaching experience. I know he coaches teams. I know he does classes. So he's got this experience. And I think that's also helped him too in knowing how to handle being on The Ultimate Fighter as a coach. Anyways, I'm going to stop. I'm going to slow down. I'm going to upload this video. MMA fans, let me know what you think about this. Have you watched the new season? What do you think of the current new season? Is there any fighters that get your interest? I know a lot of people like Uriah Hall. Josh Salmon's a good fighter, but I just can't stand him as a person for some reason. He just, oh god, guy just rubs me the wrong way, but that's another video I can talk about. Uriah Hall seems to be the one that everyone's talking about because of that spinning back kick. We'll see how far he goes. I know that he fought Chris Weidman. That's on YouTube if you want to watch that. What else? How do you think that Jon Jones has come across? How do you think that Chael Sonnen has come across? Has Chael Sonnen surpassed what you really thought of him? Were you one of those guys that hated Chael at the beginning and have you warmed to him? Or are you someone that just doesn't like Chael, period, and, you know, could give two shits? Write your comments. Let me know what you think. And before I go, here's two more things I want to get out there. I did a video about Daniel Cormier and Jon Jones, and it made me think about a lot of new fights that would, you know, come along. And here's an idea. I'm going to do these videos at some point, but I just want to know, guys, write your comments and tell me what you think about Rory McDonald versus Anderson Silva, if that ever happened. And the second fight, I want to know what you feel, you know, how you feel about it. Fabricio Verdum versus Jon Jones. Don't know why, but those fights really, really intrigue me. But, guys, you let me know what you think. You tell me how you feel. That's what this is really here for. I love reading your comments and I read them all. So I'm going to get out of here. I've got to head out and do some errands now, as I always have to do Tuesday evening. Guys, take care. Have a good time. Enjoy the UFC this weekend. Diaz St. Pierre. Tell me who you think's going to win that, and I will hopefully get back to you later.